on this computer. There we go. So what I'll do is I'll go through everything within iASEND if that works well for you.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you. I've had a little go with it, following all the little webinars you've done. So I've got a few questions as well.
Excellent. So I'll just sort of go back right from the beginning. So iASEND curriculum is broken down into what we call the A curriculum, the S curriculum, E, N and D. The A and S, well, the A's curriculum is a similar level to P1 to 4. It's not the P levels. It's just we had to give it what it was the similar sort of level to. And the same with the S. It's a similar level to P5 to 8, but it's not actually the P levels. E is the Key Stage 1 curriculum broken down into smaller steps, and Key Stage 2 curriculum broken into smaller steps, and D is Key Stage 3 broken into smaller steps. Now, the other thing that you need to know within iASEND is our attainment codes. Now, these crop up in several different places, but they actually give quite a lot of information. A lot of people have the illusion that it's actually the number of statements being ticked off, but it isn't. What it is the hundreds place value, the hundreds holder tells you what curriculum that they're on. So for example, less than 100, they're working on the A curriculum. If they're working in the hundreds, they're in the S curriculum, 200s in the E curriculum, 300s in the N and 400s in the D curriculum. So just by seeing that number, you can then tell what curriculum they're in. The tens and units digits, what they tell you is the percentage of how much they've attained of that curriculum. So for example, a child on 192 would mean that they're on the S curriculum and they've achieved 92% of that curriculum. So that's what the attainment codes mean. And there's obviously, it's all in your welcome pack as well that you should have received. Now, the other thing that is worth mentioning is our progress measures. Now, the progress measures are set up in the way that because the children on the A curriculum, who's a sort of similar level to P1 to 4, working on the engagement model, that sort of thing, are going to be making much smaller steps than a child working on the D curriculum. So the A curriculum, for a whole year, they should make 5%. For the S curriculum, it's 7%, E is 10, 12 is N is 12 and D is 15. Now, the reason behind that is all in the rationale within the welcome pack that I've sent through to you. I'll let you read that up in your own time. But these weren't just plucked out of thin air. There is a rationale behind it, and a lot of it is to do with Dr. Sue Fisher's experience. She trialed and tested it as well. Obviously, these can be changed. These are just recommendations, and how you decide to break it up per half term or term is very much down to you and your school. And obviously a lot of it comes down to time, because obviously some half terms are a lot shorter than others. So that's always worth factoring in. So what I'll do is I'll go over to the iASEND page now. Can you see the iASEND page? Is it flicked or not?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, perfect. I always again like to check. So what we'll do is we'll go through the admin bits first, and then we'll go into the entering data and the analysis side of things. So the first page I'm going to go to is our users. So you can have an admin account and a teacher account. Oh, I apologise about my door opening and closing. It's a dog. It's not a ghost. I have had people go, is there a ghost in your house? It is the dog. So yes, you've got the admin and the teacher account. Are you all right with knowing how to set that up?
Yes, I've had a go at that. And the question I had was, one of the tabs says send, and then there's some codes, NEKA, PQ and S. I wasn't sure what any of them meant.
Oh, is that in the filters?
No, it's in the when you add your pupil details.
Pupil details, yeah.
So what I did, because I didn't have a CSV file, so I added pupils individually. No, that bit is for adding the curriculum. No, yes. Just underneath it where it says send.
Oh yeah, those are the codes from Sims. So E, I know, is EHCP.
It's the EHC, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the rest of them are. I'm useless on that, but I know it's the
N mean, oh right, from Sims. N means no special needs.
Yeah.
K is SEN support, isn't it? I've no idea what A, P, Q, and S is, but I'll look in Sims because the Sims will have
it's
that.
the MIS codes. I do know.
Yeah.
I do know what that means. Yeah, these from down here are all not. These are the filters, so you don't have to fill them in there and then.
No.
They're just
And the others are quite clear. You know, like the primary send and the secondary sends are quite clear.
Yeah.
And presumably you can go back in and add details into this once you've entered a child, you know, to update it a bit.
Yeah, I will show you how to edit filters. Yeah, I can go through that. That's no problem. What I will mention is within school year. So if you keep a child onto the system, so let's say they get to the end of year 6, and then they, if you keep them on their historic data in, it will stay in the school for 3 consecutive years, or actually technically all the way up to year 15 even. So it's after 3 years it does stay within the system. If you did decide to delete a child out, because obviously you're then still technically paying for that child, so if you wanted to delete a child out of the system, what you need to do is export them out first, export all their information out like through Excel and just get it all out and then delete them, because obviously once it's deleted, it's deleted, and that will delete all the data as well. Preferences. Do you know how many assessment periods you've got on your account?
I think it was the 6.
Perfect.
I think presumably because we just bought a basic, you know, the person who set it up for us set up the sort of whatever would be the basic package. So I would imagine it's 6. I haven't actually looked at that bit yet.
We recommend 6. The reason is it doesn't make any difference in terms of like teacher workload or anything else. It just means that you've got more points to compare the progress with. So that's why we do, and obviously 6 actually does correlate with the half terms then as well, so then you can compare the progress per half term. Some schools want to make it 3 and that's fine, but that's we do kind of recommend 6 because you're wanting to capture the small steps of progress for those individual pupils, whereas if you've got 3 you've only got to compare between 3 points. If you can decide whether you want baseline or not, doesn't make any difference on the obviously you just have another data drop there, so it's you can decide whether you want to put that in or not, or remove that. Printing wise, did you know about the fact you've got to click a specific button in printing?
Go on.
Sorry, my computer's really slow when it loads the printer. There's a button called enable background graphics or background graphics. It's usually found under more settings. It's somewhere, so background graphics, and you just got to make sure that's ticked when you print anything. That's actually the same with iTrack as well.
Okay.
The reason is just because some of the page won't print otherwise, which is obviously not going to be ideal, especially when you're it's particularly noticeable when you're printing the enter assessments page. If you ever print that off, some of the page will definitely be gone if you don't click that button. So it's just to make sure that's there. So you're happy about putting children into the system. Let's have a little look at making filters. So to make a filter is sort of almost exactly the same as how it would be in iTrack. So you go to manage attributes first. You then type in the attribute name. So let's just call this, I'm going to delete that intervention. Let's call it, I'm going to call it maths intervention. So this is also quite a nice way to track any sort of the impact of interventions, because you can then have a group of children and then you can see whether that has made an impact over a set period of time. I then choose the attribute type, so as in yes they're having a maths intervention, no they're not, or text box, so then you could say like, oh, this child's having a place value intervention, this one's having a addition or subtraction. I'm going to choose yes, no first, because what that will do is it will show a default value. So this will mean that everyone will be set as no, unless I change it to everyone being set as yes, and then I go back and change it from there. I'm going to choose text box and I click add attribute. So that's made the filter, but obviously no children are allocated to it. only admin accounts can make the filter. Teacher accounts can't make a filter, but they can allocate children to the filter, and that's the sort of same setup as it is within iTrack. So if I click pupil details, so what this is going to do is going to allocate children to the it's going to allocate them to the filter. So I need to open the attribute first. So let's choose attributes. We'll go to our maths intervention. So I've clicked it, and then I choose year groups, and we choose year 5, and I press go. So you can see that box has now appeared that I can then type in, can't spell, there we go. I can then put that information in. Now, our system is clever, but not that clever. So if you, for example, here, you can see I've put a capital letter on one and not on the other. So it's just if you are using that text box type, just make sure that the capitalization is the same, and because otherwise it will appear as 2 separate filters, which is not going to be ideal. So yeah, that is sort of how to make a filter. If you are going to be doing a lot of changing of filters, what you can do is export it. So you can then edit it and then sort of import it back in as an option as well. So you just upload it here and export it there. And this is also if you want to go back and change children's filters, this is how you would do that as well. So that's the sort of filter side of things. Are you happy with setting up their children's starting points?
Yeah, what I tried was, you know, when you go into the starting points, and on the webinar you said you could click select all for the different apply to all subjects.
Yeah.
But then I wasn't sure. I think the thing that confuses me slightly, I mean, confuse is probably the wrong word, is that because there's nothing to click to save it, you don't know if it's done or not.
Yeah. So what you can do, I see what you mean. Yeah, what you can do, so you would just, for it to apply selected to all subjects, you just need to make sure you click on the curriculum to do that. So this is going to change diesel to N, for example, on everything. A way to check to see if it has done it. So let's just say we've put diesel at the N curriculum here, is you would head over to flight path to check that his has been changed over. If I choose it to no previous years, and then I need to find diesel. There's no data, that's always helpful, but hopefully when there's some data in there, or the other option that you can do is you can go to enter assessments. This is another way we could check to see if it's in there. So let's choose diesel again, and it should, so it's coming up with the N curriculum straight away. So that way I know that it has done that subject for him. Let's just double check to see if maths has worked. I need to come out of the A curriculum, so let's choose multiply. So again, it's come to N, so I know that that has worked. So that's how you can sort of check it. You can check it on flight path as well when there is some data in there.
The other question I had was that the child I was entering data for is right on that border between the A curriculum and is it the S, the next one? So I did a baseline of the A statements. But there will be 1 or 2 because he's right on that P4, P5 line, really, for some aspects. So then obviously all the A curriculum comes up. If I then select the S curriculum,
so if I close the S,
does that change how things are calculated or in terms of progress or anything?
So in terms of progress, you would look at both the A curriculum and the S curriculum in those sort of situations. That would be what we'd sort of recommend. So for example, in pupil report here, I would go, right, okay, they need to have made 5% progress in the A curriculum. Or you might want to say if they're in between, because the A curriculum is 5% and the S curriculum is 7%. Okay, they should be making 6% progress because middle number. But you would look at the A curriculum and then, I don't even know if this child's on the A curriculum, but we'll have a look. It's not progress, but I would then see that progress measure. And from that, but then if you're wanting a breakdown of seeing, okay, I want to see kind of how much progress in the A curriculum and how much progress in the S curriculum, you'd go to the attainment report.
Right. Okay. So it's two separate sets of progress data as opposed to a cumulative ongoing for each. It doesn't work through systematically. It's either the A or the S.
You could do the other option. This is what I was talking with, I think you were there for that meeting with Dawn. She was saying about using overall, because where you've got a child who is on the A curriculum and the S, because they're kind of working from the beginning, and the overall does work quite nicely for them.
Okay, I see what you mean now, because I wasn't quite sure about the overall then, but because I think there are some aspects of the particular child that I've entered data for. I think there are some aspects of the A curriculum that he will take a long time to achieve. But actually there are parts of the S curriculum which are much more discrete, so he'll be able to show that easier because of the nature of his communication difficulties. It's going to be quite difficult for him to make progress with that rapidly. Whereas the discrete, can he show you one more? Well, yes, that's something that is an easier thing to teach in some ways than some of the communication aspects, if you sort of see what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can either do it as, like I said, in the two separate curriculums, or looking at the overall, because you've got a child working at the A curriculum. It's, then you've also done that baseline, so you have got that in there. I think you could use the overall quite effectively there. The overall is one of those ones that you've got to start from the beginning for it to show the progress that you need it to show. And because you'd be doing cumulative, that's where I'd be looking for sort of perhaps 6% progress, because that's in between the two. And this is why we sort of allow the flexibility there in terms of being able to select that. That's why we don't put, I mean, I know there are colours at the bottom, but there shouldn't be, but that's why we don't put a key or anything like that, because we allow schools to kind of have that flexibility to make it work for them. So that's how that works.
Can I also, when you enter the data, when you're in the A curriculum, for example, or the other one, the statements, when you go into them, they've got little coloured flags next to them.
For the A curriculum. So that is the current, well, so I know that the government changed it to the 5 areas of engagement, because it was originally the 7 areas of engagement, and then we made the product, so that was fun. So we are looking to change it to 5. It's the 7 areas of engagement model. That's what they correspond with, but I know the government have changed that to 5. We are just waiting for our author to get back to us. It is all very much in the works to just readjust the statements.
So it's just how I thought that they would be the ones that sort of fitted together into the different the color doesn't actually mean anything, does it? It just means they're in the same section.
So these are all responsiveness focus, for example.
Because when I clicked on them, I saw the little words and thought it probably just means that they fit in the same.
And then if you look at what it feeds also into this box called this tab called the 7 areas of analysis. So if I select, let's choose the current and choose Alex, I can then see which areas he's ticked off, and then the statements, and then it gives you the points and then the percentage. But as I said, we are changing it to 5. We are our author, we're waiting for her to get back to us. She is, I mean, she's a head teacher for a special school as well, so she's got hands a bit busy. But I know she is doing it because she's got to do it for her school as well. So
I mean, that doesn't help really, does it, when things change after you've
that's what we're having with the early adopters as well.
And obviously in a special school there'll be many children who are working on this model, whereas in my school probably the child I'm talking about is the only one at the moment, and because the other children are working at that level, are working on the Development Matters curriculum, and we have a iASEND version of that. So therefore I wouldn't be using this for those children in my school, because it isn't appropriate really for them until they get to year 1, I think, to start tracking them in that way. Although maybe in the future that might be something that we can look at from reception. Or
we're looking at our end, putting reception. I mean, because this project fits sort of like obviously when they're into year 1 and
Yes,
into all the way up to key stage 3 in terms of attainment, although you could have like a year I don't know, 13 on, or year 12 on working on the key stage 3 curriculum. You can have age higher that they hit. So we are looking at putting key stage 4 into here, and also looking to put sort of EYFS. It's just trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, well, I suppose in the past, EYFS never used pivots.
No.
You know, so pivots were expected to be used, or P scales, from year 1. So therefore, that's why we're still using the development matters, and it works at the moment, you know, but obviously the way the assessments are being done is changing anyway. While we talk about putting data in, I have another child who haven't put the data in yet, but I'm going to. Now, he is working at the Key Stage 1 curriculum for reading, but he's working in the S curriculum for writing. So when you actually enter the curriculum you want in the first place, you said previously that you would always go for the lower curriculum. So for English, would I register him as the S curriculum in the first instance? And then obviously for reading, I would be going further than I will be for writing. And then would I be able to look at progress for reading and progress for writing, or is it a cumulative English progress?
So in pupil report, it would be a cumulative of both. But if you looked at progress report, that would be where it was separate.
Okay.
And where so if I chose, for example, the S curriculum, I would look at, you said it was reading for S, wasn't it?
No, S is writing and reading is
the higher one. So you'd look at here and you would focus in on that writing area, and obviously my child hasn't made any progress, but you would see a progress in these particular areas, and then that is where you could get that breakdown. And then I would go for the English curriculum, I would go to E, and then I would then see the speaking, listening, and comprehension and word reading, or even just comprehension and word reading. You know, that's going to be, I'm focusing on those 2 percentages. So that's where you get that the breakup of progress.
Yeah, because often many children, especially sort of on the spectrum, have very good decoding, but actually can't record anything at all, you know, or find it very difficult, certainly in the earlier years, to record things. So you often get that mismatch, don't you?
I mean, again, this is something that a lot of people have said to us, can you split up the reading and writing? We have looked into it. It's just something we can't. It costs £20,000 in development just to split them up. So it's something we are going to do, but we just need to save up.
That's quite a big investment, isn't it, really?
So we thought we've left it for the moment, because we think, like, for example, changing it to the 5 areas is more important currently, so it reflects the government's point of view.
You've got to prioritize things.
But it's very much on our radar. It's just very expensive at the moment to do.
Well, I mean, some of these things only become apparent once people start using products, don't they? Exactly, sort of where the glitches may or may not be, and which things are going to be more
it's the beauty of IT development.
Well, that's the nature of the beast, I think, really.
Definitely.
You don't know what's going to not work as well until you've actually tried it, which is for so many things. So.
Yes, definitely. So are you sort of okay with, apart from obviously we've gone over the areas, are you filling in each, like, as in not met, shallow, emerging, developing, deepening, functional? Are you doing it as a sort of step-by-step progress, or are you doing it sort of like the light way, which we call it, which is where you do it as like not met and functional?
For the child I've done already, I've done it the deep, you know, on all the elements, because I feel that for him particularly, it will need to be quite detailed because he's in the A curriculum. Whereas for other children, certainly for ones who are a little bit further up the school, I will just put in the the not met or the functional for the previous data, so that we can look at the whole picture for them. And then when we get to the bits they're actually working on, then we'll use the shallow, emerging, developing.
No, that makes sense. That's, I mean, because that's what we were looking at, how to sort of cut down on teachers' workload, and we realized that actually you can just use it as functional and as not met. You don't, but it obviously, like you said, it really does depend on the child, because like with some children you really do want to capture out that little tiny incremental steps, because you know, for example, your child working on the A curriculum, that is going to be really, really tiny steps. But where you've got children a bit, you know, working a bit further along, that's where you can use it as sort of not met and functional. So that sounds perfect in that respect.
And I think sort of where I've got some children in Key Stage 2 now that I have obviously tracked pivots for a number of years. What I'll do is, so that there's the data there, you know, you were talking in one of the webinars about if you have the previous data, you know, not previous, you know, if you have the data in for the previous Key Stage or curriculums, it gives you a better measure of
that was with if you're using the overall,
that's it,
because that was where you've got children between two bits and you want them progressing together. Because if you, like, say for example, a child who's working on the E curriculum, so Key Stage 1, and you only got them in, you know, you haven't backfilled, you know, in terms of looking at that overall percentage, it's going to look a bit skewed, because it's not going to take in those two other curriculums. So that's where you might consider. But if they're just working on that E curriculum, it's fine. It's if they're working in between two and you want both lots.
Well, so for a couple of the children who are Key Stage 2 now, but have more or less worked all the way through the pivots and are now in Key Stage and are accessing Key Stage 1, but aren't secure really in many of the Key Stage 1, particularly in Year 1 elements, I will go through the curriculums and tick the functional bits so that we have got the record of that, so that as they move through, you know, so they're in Year 3 now, but by the time we get them to Year 5 or 6, we want to be able to look at it. It won't impact immediately, but I think it probably will in the long term, won't it, by doing that?
And if they're not working on the A curriculum, they're moving on, you know, yes, I would go back. And especially, you know, but if they're starting on the A curriculum, for example,
it's slightly different, isn't it? But I think that, you know, there's a particular child I'm thinking of in Year 3 that will definitely need to be tracked on this, and most elements of the S curriculum have been attained, but not all of them. But there is access to the Year 1 curriculum as well. So by going back and putting functional and everything that has already been attained, I think in the long term we'll get a better result from, or a better measure of how the progress has been for them.
I think so. I think that sounds good. Was there anything else that you wanted me to particularly go over, or should I sort of, what would you like me, or did you want me to carry on sort of going through? And
I mean, those, I've sort of talked about the bits that I had questions about. So no, carry on, sorry.
No, don't apologize at all.
Around probably.
So we'll just head into Key Stage standards. So Key Stage standards in Enter Assessment says anything higher than the A curriculum has bold statements, and those bold statements are the pre-Key Stage standards. They, if you tick off a child at shallow, for example, in the pre-Key Stage statement, let's just say they were predominantly working at pre-Key Stage standard 2, and then you ticked one of them off in pre-Key Stage standard 3 in shallow because they've just started to access it. This would show on here as pre-Key Stage standard 3 because it's showing what they access, not what they fully functional in, if that makes sense. So it's just to bear that in mind. So this is what you can then see. Okay, for example, Alex is accessing English reading pre-Key Stage standard 2. So it gives me the ability to then see he might not have covered absolutely everything and being 100% secure in it all, but he is accessing it. So that's what it does at the moment. As I have said in sort of previous webinars, that we are looking to be able to flick between the two, where you can look at pre-key stage, looking at what they're accessing and what they're fully functional in, so you can then see that difference. Because I know that obviously when you get to the end of year 6 and year 2 even, being able to say this is the pre-key stage standard that they're at is obviously quite important. So
would you assume then that child who is accessing the pre-key stage standard 2 has achieved 1?
I would assume yes, but you may want to go back. Obviously, if you have a child that is particularly spiky in their profile, that was where I would go back and just look at enter assessments and go, right, well, I know that most of the pre-K standards are in, like, 1 is predominantly an S. So I would just flick through just to doubly make sure. But yes, I would assume that they are. I mean, it'd be quite surprising if they hadn't achieved, let's say, 1 and you'd mark them off as 3. You would assume that they are doing, they should be working in a way. I know you do get the spiky profiles in that respect, and that's where it would be worth just checking on for those particular children that they have attained the other areas. They're quite easy to notice in terms of the curriculums. You can see straight away which ones are which, and you can look from there. So enter assessments. There's obviously the magnifying glasses that give you a little bit of extra help in that respect. If you have got a particular objective that's not applicable.
Sorry, your sound went off then.
Did it?
No. Yeah, so it will just be the connection, won't it? Sorry. So so you've got the magnifying glasses which exemplify sort of what's meant by them.
And also for the statements as well. What you if you have a child that has, like, for example, let's say a child's not verbal and you want to take out the parts that are not verbal, you can use, that's where you would use that not applicable. That takes it out so it doesn't skew the data. So that's how that sort of not applicable works. And in terms of assessing several children at the same time, just make sure that you actually click on the squares. Otherwise, if you click on their name, it's not going to click multiple children all at the same time. So it's just to make you aware of that. And then you've obviously got the filters at the top that you can then filter a group of children as you need. So let's go into pupil overview. So pupil overview just tells you how many children are in each year group, working at each curriculum, and who's a boy and who's a girl. It just gives you that bit more of a breakdown, just to check you've got the right children in, and where they're at. We've sort of looked at pupil report, but I will just go over it. So are you happy with the numbers on here in terms of you've got the number of statements and what sort of points they've got? This, because I'm looking at overall, this is the number of points available and this is the number of statements. So that's the difference between the two. And then this is telling you how many points they've achieved. So if they're fully functional in something, they get 5 points. And if they're shallow, they only get 1 point. And then that works it out as a percentage of how much they've attained of that curriculum. So you can see that they've attained 12% of, and this would be of all curriculums because I'm choosing overall. And then what it does is takes one away from the other to give you that progress measure. So that's how it works in that respect. We've sort of touched on the attainment and progress report, but what I will say with the progress report is that you can show regression. So hopefully there's never going to be another lockdown, but I mean, technically we're in one, but schools don't close or anything like that. But if there is regression, you can go backwards on the dots, and then this is where it will show as minus something. Equally, obviously, if it's improving, it will show as plus and it will be green. And you can export this to Excel. Anywhere you see that button is where you can export it out in that respect. Are you happy with the benchmarking tool? Do you know how that works?
Can you just go over it for
me? Yeah, no problem. So you choose the subject and then the academic year and then the assessment period. You then choose the key stage. Now, this is the key stage based off their age. So this is not where they're working at. What I should add is obviously all is everybody. Key stage 1 will show as key stage 1. Key stage 2 will have key stage 1 and 2, and 3 would be 1 and 2 and 3. That makes sense. I'm going to go to key stage 1 at the moment. I then choose the barrier to learning, and I choose the severity. The severity is, there's a key down here, so I'm going to choose moderate. These are the barriers to learning that you've set up in pupil details. So press go. So it brings up a graph. The dark blue dots are my children, and I can actually click on them and it's going to tell me what the child's name is. This one's called pupil 1. And then what you have got is blue lines. Now these blue lines are the averages based off the data. So you can see where my child is on its own. It's slap bang in the middle because there's no other children in there. Here, you know, the average is in between. So it's not a national average, it's just average based off the data. There are about 3,000 children, around 3,000 to 4,000 is in that mark, of real children on iASEND. So that's just so you know how many there are. Now what we've got is, if I look at this chart, so you can see the attainment here. So what this means is the attainment code. So we can see that this child is working on the A curriculum because it's below 100, and they have got 12% of that curriculum. So that's what we can see the attainment on our own children. Although this child says age 8, it's just because it's a demo account. Yours will have the actual correct ages in. So if we look at this cluster here, they've got a pupil profile of 220. So what this means is it's actually telling you their barriers to learning. So what I've got is the first digit is cognitive, and we set that as moderate. So that's why it's appearing as 2. And you can see they all start with a 2. The second digit is behavioural. Now we can see here, it's also a moderate behavioural need. And the last digit is physical. So there's no physical barriers. So that's what that pupil profile does. Now, if I change, let's say, for example, to behavioural, and I'm going to change that to 4, that's going to bring up some different data again. There's nobody at that stage, but you know, that's where I can see the third digit as profound. So that's going to give me, you know, that's how I can set the numbers in that respect. But if I go back to cognitive 2, what this does is I can then compare. So obviously I've got no children who are similar. We've purposely tried to keep them quite different, but so it doesn't, you know, skew everyone's data. But if you have a child, for example, here, we can see that this child is significantly different from the other children. What you sort of expect to see is like almost a cluster. Now, if your child in the benchmarking seems significantly out from other children, it probably is because the barriers to learning isn't quite right, rather than the assessment. It might just be one of those children that is, you know, completely different, and that does happen. But it would be worth, if you've, like, for example, this child here, I would be going back and looking at the barriers to learning and maybe adjusting them to what was more of a relevant fit. It might be that they're now slightly out of date, or you were just beginning to know the child and you've had to go back and change them. So if it is different, do go back and just have a little check. Where you've got this cluster here, then what you can see is obviously you can compare your children in comparison to other children from other schools, so that you can see how you're meeting the needs of those children. So that's sort of how the benchmarking tool works. What you've got similarly is the school benchmarking, which takes it as a collective. So I'm focusing on all children that have a cognitive barrier, and I'm looking at the subject of English. So the blue one is my school, and the light blue one is like an average iASEND school based off all the real data. So I can then see the attainment sort of code. So generally speaking, in English, children who are a mild cognitive barrier are working on the S curriculum and have achieved 8.8% of it, whereas other schools are generally, they're on the S curriculum and they've achieved 51%. So that's how you can then just see, you know, that's how your school is doing in comparison to other schools, and it is taking that as an average.
Some of that would depend on the numbers of your children though, wouldn't it?
Yes, it obviously, yes, it would obviously in that respect, but it's because it's focusing on the average attainment code, you know.
It could skew the data though if you've only got 1 or 2 children.
Yes, of course,
with 3,000 children, you know, it's gonna potentially.
Let's head over to subject report. Internet just loading. So the subject report, this is also where the attainment code has cropped up again. So we can see that this child is working on the A curriculum. Now, for example, I know that Alex isn't working on the A curriculum, he would be working on the S curriculum. What that means is I've just not set his starting point. So if you are seeing this and you're going, oh, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem right, this is a sort of another way to check if the starting point is correct. This is, so it's important that that is relevant. Now, as I said before, that the assessment point 1 or baseline, whichever you've got in your account to end of year, will automatically set your targets. The target isn't the number of statements, it's again using that attainment code where it's saying, okay, I want him to have achieved 90% of the A curriculum in this scenario, or 40% of the maths A curriculum. So it's working off percentages. When you can go over and change them if you don't agree with them, but when they have met that, it goes green. So I've purposely changed this one so you can see it's gone green. We don't set targets for all subjects. You can see that, like, for example, art isn't in there. We just do it for a few. With next to it, you've got the notebook, and then this notebook is where you can add information. You know, you've got grids. Is how you wish to use it. Different people use it in slightly different ways, but I know a lot of people actually tend to put their EHCP targets alongside it, just because they've then got all the information together. So it's just sort of one place that you can look at that information. Let's head into subject dashboard. So the subject dashboard and the curriculum dashboards are places that you can see children as a group in your school. So you're all the children as sort of a collective. So I choose 2 periods of time, I choose the subject, and then I set the progress target measure. So at the moment they're sort of set as the default, but if you're using obviously that cumulative, or you're saying that actually that my children should be making 6% progress, you know, that's where you would put it. Where I would put the, where you've got them working between 2 curriculums, I would set it for the lower curriculum as the target that you want them to. But what you can see here is then I can see, for example, that generally speaking, you've got people, so let's take the S curriculum here, they're in the English curriculum, they're making 16.4% progress. 16.4% progress would be, yeah, what they're making here generally in the S curriculum in 2018. If they're working on the E curriculum, they're making 2.6% progress. So it's just being able to see, I mean, it's generally these 2 tabs, this one and the curriculum dashboard, are generally used more by special schools, but it's just making you aware. You can then see, you know, who's meeting target, obviously not the individuals, but as a percentage, are they meeting their target or not? And then the curriculum dashboard is focusing on all the subjects together, but it's focusing on, you know, whether all of the children have met their target, depending on the curriculum that they're on. Yeah,
sorry, can you
go for it.
Scroll down a bit.
Yeah.
And you've got these coloured. So is this showing us that, say, 30 in English, for example, in 2018, 32% didn't meet the targets, whereas 42% did?
Yeah, well, 5% were within their target range, so they were in that 5%. 42.6 were way above it.
Okay.
These went sort of a bit above, and these ones were 82.6 were way below target. So that's kind of how it's setting it out. And then you've got the graph, sort of similar to iTrack in the graph. It just allows you to then see who's on target. I mean, not by individual, but
but it shows you roughly how children with those profiles are doing within your school.
Yes.
Whether they're making acceptable progress or not.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a nice one to be able to sort of show governors and things
Yes,
like that.
yeah,
And
it's
say,
very
here
visual
you go.
for governors, isn't it?
Yeah, you go, this is the progress that they're making. Because really, I mean, I obviously want to focus on attainment, but generally with these children, you want to be focusing on progress. So this is why we've kept it very progress centered, particularly on these 2 pages, because you want to see how much they're achieving. We'll head over to Flight Path. You don't need to worry about this dashboard page. This is actually this is an original page. We haven't taken it out yet, but we've replaced them with the subject and curriculum dashboard based off feedback. So don't worry about that dashboard page. So with this, you set the number of previous years if you require. Now, what this does is it then just tells you that you've got the attainment code again, so you can see that this child in the first AP in year 7 was on the A curriculum and achieved 48%. And then I can see obviously they've improved up to 77%. And then you can then see all the subjects together as a collective. And I know that some people like to sort of print screen that particular graph to show parents, and you know, it's a nice one to be able to see which subjects that they're stronger and weaker at. If you're not assessing against a particular subject, it will just lie flat across the bottom, and that's fine. Equally, if you want that removed from your account, just let us know, because we can take them out if there is a subject that you don't want to be shown in iASEND. Was there sort of anything else, or any questions you had? Because I've sort of covered everything I've sort of planned to.
So going back to users,
yeah,
obviously I've got the sort of admin account.
Yeah.
And then how many teachers can I actually add?
As many as you like. It's the same as iTrack.
Like.
We would recommend you having 2 admin accounts.
Okay.
Just so that, like, 2 different people, just in case anything, like you yourself out or whatever, then someone else can get in, and it just sort of saves that side of things. But yeah, you know, you can have as many users as you like. That's no problem. Saying you can have TAs. It's the same as iTrack in that respect.
Yeah, I'll get the so can I set up another admin account?
Yeah.
Put the deputy who runs the eye tracker on as the admin, because obviously if I wasn't able to do it, somebody needs to be able to access it, don't they?
Yes.
And then I can add teachers, because I'm basically going to be using this for my EHCP children. So therefore it's going to be a fair number of teachers, because of the children, they're rarely in, you know, you've rarely got 2 in the same class.
No, that's and that's what we sort of that's a very common occurrence. So and as admin you can set them up. You just need to make sure that you put their email in correctly, because I've got special powers with my account. This is why the password's appearing, but yours will just be, I think, username, email, and then login type, and then it sends an email to the teacher, and then they have to verify
it. Just like the iTrack, basically. And then the other question, I don't know if you can answer this question. I think we bought 6 pupils, but I'm not sure if that is right.
Yep, I can quickly check that. What I'll do is I will stop sharing and I will stop the recording.